Hello, welcome to part 27 of the Angular Complete series represented by tutorial polls, select control or drop-down control. When working on real-world applications, it's a very common requirement to make a selection from a given set of values. In scenarios where we need to enforce the selection of a single value from a list of values, the drop-down control is a very common choice. Let's see how we can add a drop-down in Angular. Open the userdetailComponent.html and remove everything except the default p tag. Also, from userdetailComponent class, remove everything except the default generated code. Alright, let's see how we can add select control in Angular's way. First, let's see how we add a select control in usual HTML5. Open userdetailComponent.html and open bracket. Then select and close Angular bracket. Now inside type option. Each option in a drop-down has one text and value. Text is displayed to the user and the associated value is saved in database or any operation which we want to do based on selection. We use this value in general. Alright, let's make this drop-down as a list of departments. Display text goes here inside the option. And each option has a value attribute where the associated value is added. Type inside text as manager and then for value add attribute value on the option and assign it value 1. Now we have one option manager and its associated value. Let's copy and paste the same thing 2 more times. Change value as 2 and 3, then text as clerk and cashier. Let's run the application and see on the browser what we get so far. npm start and press enter. Let the application build. Alright, the application is running now and as you can see the dropdown is rendered and it has all the options as manager, clerk and cashier. If we select any one of these available options, it shows the selected text inside the dropdown. Select control is added. This is fine in the cases where you have a fixed set of defined options. That's not what happens in the real world. We get these options from the server and bind them to the dropdown usually. Right click on app folder, select new file and give the name as department.interface.ts. Then inside export interface iDepartment, open close curly brackets and define 2 properties as the ID of type number and name of type string. So each of our department will hold 2 properties. Open the userdetailComponent.ts and define a variable as public departments of type array of iDepartment equals empty array. Then inside add 3 empty objects. First object's ID as 1 and name as manager. Second object's ID as 2 and name as clerk. Third object's ID as 3 and name as cashier. Also define a property as a public dept ID of type number. This will be our selected department ID. Now go to userdetailComponent.html and remove these last options. And on first option type *ngFor equals let dpt of departments and in value interpolate the ID by typing dept.id and interpolate display text as dept.name. As we know, ngFor repeats the element on which it is used. So option will be repeated 3 times because we have 3 objects in the departments. Dept variable will hold the current object in each option. Alright, save the changes and see the browser. Nothing has changed, which is what was expected. Now let's add a variable that should be assigned with the selected value. Let's add ngModel, so type square brackets and then parenthesis and then ngModel and for value dept id, the variable which we defined. Also add a p tag and interpolate the dept id to see the changed value. Save the changes and observe the browser. Nothing is selected as of now. But when we change selection, associated value gets assigned to dptid variable. As you can see, current dptid is rendering in p tag. The beauty of using this ngModel is if dptid variable has some value assigned already and that value has a matching value in available options, then the option will automatically be selected because ngModel is 2-bit data binding. Let's open user detail component ts and assign 1 as a value to this variable. Also define a function as public reset dpt, complete the function and inside type this dot dptid equal 1. Now open the user detail component HTML and add a button. Then add a click handler and pass reset dept as a callback for click handler. Also give the button text as reset dept. Save the changes and observe the browser. See, by default manager is selected because manager's ID got a match with dptid value. Change the selection and see department ID changed. Click on the reset button and see department ID changed and selection also gets changed. There is one minor thing remaining. If you see here, initially when we have no value for dptid dropdown is empty. Let's give the initial value to dptid as null. Save the changes and see the browser. No value is selected. Either we can live with it or else we can have an option that will be selected when a null or no value is assigned to department ID. In the user detail component HTML, add one option on top of the ngFor option. Give it value as null and text as none. Save the changes and see the browser. Default none is selected because we have department ID as null. And when we make a change in selection, it is changing department ID accordingly. What if we want to add some logic on change of department ID? We can add a change handler in select control. Let's define a function in user detail component ts as public on dept change, complete the function and inside console.log this dot deptid. Copy the function name. Then in user detail component HTML, add change handler and paste the defined function name, save the changes and open the console. Now make any change in the dropdown and see in the console values are getting logged as expected with the change of the selection. We will see how we can use select control in reactive forms. For now, this is it. Alright, now we know what a select control is and how we can use it. That was it for this lecture. Thank you and keep watching. Please do like and share the video. Also don't forget to show your support by subscribing to the channel.